I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today we're delving into an incredibly important topic on how scleroderma impacts gut health and what you can do about it. Now, even if you don't have a diagnosis of scleroderma, this episode is absolutely worth listening to because the gut issues I'll be talking about today are common in many autoimmune diseases. So whether you're living with Hashimoto's, lupus, Scleroderma, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, or if you've got ongoing gut symptoms like bloating, reflux, constipation, food sensitivities, or nutrient deficiencies, you'll come away with lots of practical actions you can start using today. And when it comes to working with clients in my clinic, the gut is often the area that we are going to focus on first because it is so central to so many different systems in the body. It's central to our nervous system, our immune system, and it's where we digest and absorb nutrients. So it's absolutely key, and that is particularly important in scleroderma. And one quick heads up, inside the Autoimmune Forum, my free group that you can find by going to www.theautoimmuneforum.com, we've got a live Q&A on foods to eat for autoimmune disease coming up on the 18th of June, and I'd love you to be there. So feel free to join the group and then you can be part of that live Q&A and ask all your questions, and you'll find the link for that in the show notes. Right, well, let's get started. What happens to the gut in scleroderma? Well, scleroderma or systemic sclerosis is an autoimmune disease where the body produces too much collagen. So we hear a lot about the benefits of collagen and why we need collagen and why it's important. But in this particular condition, the body is producing too much collagen. It's not that somebody is taking too much collagen in, because actually when you are consuming collagen, you are digesting it. It's not the collagen that's in your skin and in your gut lining and in your connective tissue is not the same collagen that you would take as a collagen powder. You digest that, you break it down, and then your body makes collagen. And in scleroderma and in systemic sclerosis, you will produce too much collagen. It really is regardless of whether you're taking lots of collagen. And this can affect not only the skin, but also the internal organs. So the collagen is produced and can cause lots of symptoms as a result of that. And it can be a particular issue when it comes to the gut. And in fact, around 80 to 90% of people with scleroderma develop gut involvement. And here's why that matters. Your gut relies on the coordinated movement of muscles and nerves to move through, and that's what we call gut motility. And it's something that I will focus on and ask my clients to monitor by doing their colon transit time, understanding how long food takes to pass through their system. And in scleroderma, when collagen builds up in those tissues, that movement slows down or becomes disrupted. So what can happen? Well, you might experience difficulty swallowing, there might be reflux, bloating, delayed stomach emptying, which can lead to constipation. And one that's particularly common is something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which you might have heard of SIBO. And that can cause a lot of bloating, it can cause pain, it can cause nutrient malabsorption, and it certainly needs addressing if that's something that you are experiencing, because it can just have a knock-on effect to so many other different systems when that is an issue for you. And when I ask my clients, do you experience any gut issues? Do you have any digestive issues? And especially when I'm doing the initial call, I normally hear, no, I'm absolutely fine. There's no issue at all. And then when I ask, well, do you get any bloating? And typically somebody will say, oh yeah, well, after eating, I get a little bit of bloating, but isn't that normal? And really, if you're getting bloating under the ribs or just below the belly button, it really isn't that normal, and there are things that you can do about it. I mean, it is common and it is normal. It's giving us a sign that there is this imbalance in the body. So even if you have a different autoimmune condition and you don't have scleroderma, but you have very similar patterns, which can occur in many different autoimmune conditions, many conditions that affect the gut specifically, like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, but even in conditions that have no association with the gut, like psoriasis or arthritis, which they do really have an association with the gut because it's all really interconnected. But even in that scenario, it's important to be focused on this and to address these imbalances. And what I've been seeing a lot is people who are coming to me with a lot of post-viral gut issues. There's been a lot of viruses going around, and I feel that has massively impacted people's guts, and it can also create an issue with their nervous system as well, because again, the nervous system and the gut are interconnected, and often when one is dysregulated, the other becomes dysregulated as well. So the principles I'm going to be sharing today are going to be relevant for so many of you, whether you have scleroderma or not. So let's talk about how you can support the gut with some actionable strategies that you can take after this podcast episode, after listening today, and you can go and start implementing them into your life. And let's move into the first area, which is gut motility, because when motility slows down, food then sits in the gut for a longer period of time, bacteria starts to overgrow, and then you can have gas building up, you can have issues with nutrient absorption, you can end up with bacteria growing in the gut that shouldn't be there, things like Klebsiella, Citrobacter. These are gut bacteria that I'm seeing a lot when my clients are doing stool tests with me, and they shouldn't be there, and when they are there and they're growing in high amounts, they can get through the gut lining and they can cause inflammation. And it can start with the fact that there isn't enough movement through the digestive tract, and it can be the start of the issues, and this can go on to create trouble downstream and can potentially lead to other symptoms as well as the main symptoms of whatever autoimmune condition you've got. So supporting motility is absolutely foundational, and this is where so many people with autoimmune related gut issues struggle. And one of the simplest things you can do is to use fresh ginger. I absolutely love ginger. I have it in my cooking. I'll put it in my bone broth. I even just grate it into bone broth. I will have it as a tea. I like to put it in the juices that I drink. So there's many ways that you can bring ginger in, and you can just have it before a meal and warm the digestive tract. And that can just help your body get ready for digestion as well. And what ginger does is it naturally stimulates motility and helps the gut to move the food through, which is what we're looking for. And digestive bitters are also really helpful here because they help to stimulate your digestive juices and get the whole process moving. So focusing more on the gallbladder and the liver. And I'm sure you've heard me mention this before, but I will ordinarily have an artichoke leaf tea before my main meal on an evening. That can just help with the gastric juices, but it can also help with bile flow. So that's another thing that can help the digestion to work optimally and to support gut motility as well. And here's where I want to bring in something that I think is massively under-recognized, and that is the relationship between gut motility and vagal tone, because your vagus nerve, the nerve that we talk about a lot for the parasympathetic response, so how we calm down the nervous system, but it controls your gut motility. So if your vagus nerve is underactive, which is extremely common in autoimmune disease and after chronic stress, your gut simply won't move well, no matter what supplements you take. And this is why I focus so much on the nervous system and the regulation of the nervous system with the clients that I work with in my clinic. And you may know that I personally use the NeuroSim device. It was introduced to me last year, and I've been using it most days now, and I use it proactively, and I sometimes even use it when I'm feeling stressed and in more of a reactive way, but I use it proactively. I use it every day. When I get an hour slot, I can just plug in my NeuroSim, and that helps to support vagal tone. And I have seen huge benefits benefits for both myself and my clients, especially in improving gut motility and reducing bloating. And I do have a discount code if you are interested in purchasing one yourself or trialing one yourself, and I'll put that discount code in my show notes if you'd like to explore that more. But remember, you can also support your vagal tone in other ways. You can practice breath work and doing that regularly throughout your day, even just in 5-minute intervals. You can do humming. Singing can be great for vagal tone, and even regular cold exposure. And just having cold exposure on your face, you don't have to do a cold plunge. That can be helpful, but actually just having the cold water on your face can help with vagal tone as well. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that, but I've found incorporating the NeuroSim into my life has been pretty straightforward, and I don't feel like I even need to think about it now. I actually think to myself, I've got a client plan to write up, or I've got this piece of research to do where I know I need to be intensely focused, and that's when I will use my NeuroSim, and it helps to calm down my stress response as well. And I see that in my Aura Ring, which monitors my stress levels throughout the day. So I can see the effect of that, and it's also going to help with my gut motility. But next, let's talk about reflux, because this is a really big piece of the puzzle for many people with scleroderma or other autoimmune gut issues. Now, it's very common to be prescribed PPIs, which are proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, to manage reflux symptoms. And because the esophagus is so fragile, sometimes that is what is needed to protect your esophagus from being damaged. And, some people will get to the point where the damage is irreversible, and that is just something that needs to be managed, and you can manage it as well. But if you can prevent it, that is the main thing. But as we're aware with any medications, there are trade-offs, and PPIs actually reduce stomach acid, and that can create a knock-on effect in your gut, because stomach acid is essential for proper digestion, for breaking down proteins, for absorbing minerals like iron and calcium, and for keeping bacteria in check in the upper gut, which is where you might experience those bloating symptoms. So when stomach acid is too low, you can end up with nutrient deficiencies, higher risk of SIBO, and poor overall digestion. So what can you do about this, especially if you're on PPIs long term and can't reduce them? Well, first, there are a number of mechanical and lifestyle strategies that can make a real difference, even if stomach acid remains low. One is to elevate your head when you are sleeping and in your bed, and I mean the whole head of the bed, not just piling up the pillows. Raising it by about 6 to 8 inches can help the stomach contents to remain there rather than being pushed up by lying down, and that is particularly important overnight. The second is to try and eat earlier in the evening. Don't go to bed with a full stomach, ideally no later than 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, and avoid heavy meals late in the night. And chewing is also incredibly important. I often say to clients to aim for about 20 to 30 chews per bite of food, which might sound like a lot. That is where digestion starts, and this helps to break down the food mechanically. It stimulates saliva and digestive enzymes, which is your first line of defense when it comes to breaking down foods, and also when it comes to your immune system as well. And that is going to help, especially if your stomach acid is low. And for people who are able to tolerate it, a small amount of apple cider vinegar diluted in water before a meal can help to gently stimulate digestion. But as I said, that's not for everybody, and sometimes it can do more harm than good. Just keep an eye on that. You can perhaps try it out, but obviously you don't want to do anything that could cause more damage to the esophagus. And one tool that I really recommend is to use DGL, which is a type of licorice. It helps to soothe and protect the esophageal lining, which is what you want to protect, and that can protect the esophagus without affecting acid production as well. And that can be really helpful alongside a PPI, but also if you are tapering off them, obviously with your doctor's supervision. But beyond the basics, there are other options as well, like slippery elm, that can help to coat and soothe the esophagus and the stomach lining. I like to use that if somebody is in quite a lot of pain with the reflux. You can also use marshmallow root, and that again, can really help to soothe the digestive tract. Interestingly, melatonin has come up, and there is emerging research that shows that melatonin taken at night may improve the lower esophagus sphincter tone, and that can help to close that and reduce reflux symptoms. And this is particularly relevant for scleroderma, where connective tissue is the main issue in that condition. And then there is magnesium citrate, which can be helpful for motility and for supporting the relaxation of those smooth muscles, which are particularly important in digestion. So we also need to think about stress and vagal tone here, because when you're in a high stress state, you're in that fight or flight, digestion is impaired, the lower esophageal sphincter may function less effectively, and reflux is more likely. And this is another reason why I emphasize daily vagus nerve stimulation, whether through neurosim, breath work, humming or singing, because it supports more coordinated digestion and it helps with that better sphincter function, which is a key element when it comes to reflux. And finally, I want to mention that for some people, certain trigger foods can play a role, but it's not about cutting everything out. Common triggers include alcohol, caffeine, chocolate, mint, fatty foods and spicy foods, but this is very individual, and it's worth keeping a symptom diary and seeing what really affects you and then working to personalize your diet accordingly. And I was working with a client recently who had a lot of acid reflux. We took out these common trigger foods and it just wasn't making a difference, and then she did a food sensitivity test and it revealed a lot of foods that she was sensitive to, and she wasn't expecting to be sensitive to them, and they're not the ones that you would expect for reflux. And when she took those out, she saw a huge improvement, one of them being dairy. So the key takeaway here is that while PPIs have their place, they're not the whole solution, and you need to be thinking about the mechanical support, the lifestyle adjustments, the nervous system regulation, and protecting your gut lining, and where appropriate, working with your doctor to see if your PPI dose can be reduced over time once these other strategies are in place. But please seek medical advice for that. And I see it time and time again in my clinic that when we address this holistically, people often find that their reflux becomes much better. They are then able to incorporate other nutritional strategies and actually make different choices from a lifestyle perspective as well, because they're not in that uncomfortable position with their reflux. Now, nutrient absorption is also another big one. When gut motility is impaired, when SIBO is present, you can easily become deficient in key nutrients. And I regularly will see low iron, low B12, deficiencies in fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, and low magnesium or calcium. I always recommend having these nutrients checked, ideally every 6 to 12 months. And then when needed, I will use supplements to help to improve those deficiencies, but obviously working on the underlying root cause of those deficiencies as well. And it could be through diet too. And taking a good quality digestive enzymes with meals can be hugely helpful if this is a problem, and that can help with protein digestion, fat digestion, and nutrient absorption, and also supporting bile flow. And that could be through bitters, as I mentioned, artichoke, beetroot is also good for bile flow, and that is another simple but really powerful step in improving your digestion. Now, as I mentioned, SIBO itself is incredibly common in scleroderma, but also in many of my other autoimmune clients. And if you're experiencing bloating, distension, pain after meals, or unpredictable bowel movements, it's worth considering a SIBO breath test or doing a gut test, because if you do a stool test, it will give you more insight into whether this is a factor for you based on the bacteria that are growing in your gut. And if SIBO is present, you'll want to work with a practitioner like me to address it properly. I often combine herbal antimicrobials, and they will be different depending on the bacteria that are coming up or depending on the issue, and that will help with the motility as well. But we'll also be working on the nervous system and finding ways to help to calm any stress response that is happening in the body that might be affecting the gut as well. And one of my popular services is my gut health testing package. It includes a stool test, a complementary health plan, plus a test analysis and a consultation. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes, because that's going to be a really good first step to understand what is going on in my gut? What are the issues that I need to address? What are the potential ongoing issues of having scleroderma, and how can I manage those long term? And also, what is at the root cause of my autoimmune condition? Because often there are things going on in the gut that could have contributed to you developing the autoimmune condition in the first place. So as I said, I'll pop that in the show notes if you would like to find out more about the gut health testing package. And one thing I will say about SIBO is please be careful becoming overly restricted with your diet long term. There are certain foods that can flare up SIBO, and there is a place for removing them for a short period of time. But the key here is to identify the underlying root cause, address that, and then you can bring in more foods, because every food has a different benefit, and the more that you restrict them, the less likely you are to have a varied gut microbiome, which is extremely important. You might be missing out on some key nutrients. So just completely restricting your diet and living like that, actually from an emotional perspective, isn't great either. So there are lots of ways that you can resolve any gut issues that there are, and then you can start to incorporate those foods again. Because as a short-term dietary approach, these types of diets can be helpful, but the ultimate goal is to build back diversity and resilience in the gut microbiome, and not to stay on fewer and fewer foods, which when clients come to me, they are at that point. They have tried lots of different diets, they've taken out foods, and they're just reacting to more and more foods. And that's where a stool test can give you so much more insight. But when it comes to diet, simple principles really do make a difference. I usually recommend starting with cooked vegetables because they are generally much easier to tolerate than raw when motility is slow or when SIBO is present. So think gentle steaming, sauteing or roasting, and gradually increasing the amount and variety as your tolerance improves. I absolutely love soups, stews and slow cooked meats, and they are fantastic for gut healing. I love the Instant Pot that I have. I find it so easy as well and really convenient. And they provide these easily digestible nutrients, and the cooking process can help to break down fibres, which can make it a much gentler on the gut and on digestion. And I also love including bone broth or fish broth because these are rich in amino acids like glycine and glutamine, which help with the gut lining. And as I always talk about, omega-3 rich foods are another essential component. Wild salmon, sardines, anchovies, mackerel, they all are anti-inflammatory, and they provide anti-inflammatory fats which reduce gut and systemic inflammation. They need to be part of your diet, and if not, it is certainly worth considering supplementing, obviously with a practitioner's guidance. But you do need these omega-3s. It's not that the other fats are bad. You need lots of different fats in your diet, but omega-3s in particular for somebody who is in a chronically inflamed state are absolutely vital. So if you're plant-based or pescatarian, you can also find these oils in flaxseed or algae oil. And as I said, if you are not getting these fats from your diet, certainly look at supplementing. Now, one of the most important and often most neglected is the strategies to slowly build up plant diversity. And the more different fibres and polyphenols you feed your microbiome, the more resilient and balanced it becomes. But this needs to be done gradually, especially if you have SIBO or gut sensitivity. And I often suggest starting with small amounts of well-tolerated cooked vegetables and roasting them. Just have a big baking tray of root vegetables, put them in the oven. You can then have them in your fridge ready to eat if you don't eat them straight away. And as your motility improves and SIBO is addressed, you can start to expand a wider range of fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, and properly prepared grains and pulses if you are able to tolerate them, and you can cook those in the Instant Pot as well. A simple goal is to aim for about 30 different plant foods across a week, and I just use a rule of thumb that I will have 3 different colours of plant-based foods on every plate that I eat, and that can include herbs as well, and it can include garlic and things that you might not think are included in that. But this is a good target to build towards. Try and buy different fruits and vegetables. Don't always buy the same ones. It's easy to get into that habit. So just gradually build those up. And if you are unable to tolerate a vegetable, then just make a note of it. And whilst you're going through this recovery process, you can maybe introduce it again later down the line. And then when you are ready for it, you can start to include fermented foods. But I think if you are having gut issues, fermented foods can sometimes actually cause more harm than good. Even though they are very beneficial, we don't want them in large amounts, and we also don't want them when our gut is in balance, because we could end up causing disruption in the gut when there is already disruption there. And one final tip, don't forget about the importance of protein. Adequate protein is essential for gut repair, immune regulation, it's important for connective tissue. All are crucial in scleroderma and other autoimmune diseases. So make sure your meals include a good quality protein source, whether it's fish, eggs, or meat, or well-tolerated plant proteins, which, as I said, you can pressure cook to the absorption of them. So the overall message here is gentle on the gut, nutrient dense, diverse, and personalize to your current tolerance, because that is absolutely key. And always work towards building back resilience and flexibility in your diet over time. And finally, let's not forget about constipation, because this is one of the most important issues to address if you're dealing with scleroderma or any gut motility problems, because chronic constipation worsens dysbiosis. It increases toxin buildup, it promotes SIBO reoccurrence, and it impairs overall detoxification. And it's incredibly common in my clinic, particularly in those with nervous system dysregulation, connective tissue changes, or post-viral gut damage. And the first place that I will start is to check my clients' magnesium levels, or to recommend taking magnesium citrate, because it's gentle, it's well tolerated, and it supports that motility in the gut by relaxing the small muscles in the gut, and that can help with constipation. And I usually recommend starting with a smaller dose, say around 200 to 300 milligrams, and then that can be adjusted as needed. Kiwis are a really brilliant food to support natural motility and boost peristalsis, which is part of gut motility, and that is one backed by research too. 2 kiwis a day can significantly improve stool frequency and consistency, and it's also a lovely food-based intervention. So if you are struggling with that, give kiwis a try. Pume puree or soaked chia are also really helpful. Chia puddings I think are great to start including. You can also blend them if you don't like the texture of a chia pudding, and they have both soluble and insoluble fibers, and they draw water into the bowel to support easier elimination, just making sure that you are well hydrated as well. But, and this is a big but, if you're constipated and your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, no amount of fiber will truly resolve it. This is where vagal tone becomes absolutely essential. When your vagus nerve is underactive, peristalsis, which as I said is those wave-like movements that move the waste through your gut, simply won't happen effectively. So daily vagus nerve support is absolutely key and can make a huge difference. I also recommend paying attention to the meal timing and rhythm. Leaving space between meals rather than consistent grazing is absolutely key. I remember when I had lots of gut issues and my autoimmune symptoms were at their worst, and I would just graze all day at my desk, and there was actually a snack that I bought which was all about grazing, and I would have like a pack of nuts in my drawer. I mean, not all of it was unhealthy, but I just wasn't giving my digestive system a break. So leaving that space between meals is vital. It allows this thing called the migrating motor complex to do its job, which helps to clean out the small intestines, and it needs that break to be able to do that. So if you're not giving it a break, that's not happening, and that will also help with motility. And of course, hydration and movement are critical as well. Aim for at least 2 litres of water a day. You can add in some electrolytes to that and make some form of daily movement part of your routine, whether it's walking, yoga, Pilates, or light resistance work is absolutely key, because even gentle movement can help to stimulate the natural contractions in the gut. And if constipation has been present long term, or if it worsens despite these measures, that's when it's a sign to look deeper. In many cases, treating the underlying SIBO, supporting vagal tone, addressing thyroid function, and improving gut resilience are key pieces to the puzzle. So if this is an issue for you, please don't ignore it. Resolving constipation is one of the most impactful things you can do to support your gut and your wider immune health. And it's, again, if somebody that I'm working with is constipated, we have to start there. We're not going to start with detox, because if that part of detoxification, which is the end stage of detoxification, isn't working appropriately, then we really need to work on that at the beginning, because that is just going to make sure that the whole channel is clear. And when we are doing anything with clearing out bacteria or detoxing or anything that we need to do to get better, we know that our digestion is stable. So let's recap. If you're dealing with scleroderma or chronic gut issues, I encourage you to think about gut motility and vagal tone first, because when those are supported, everything else tends to improve. Be mindful of reflux management and avoid relying on PPIs if you can. Obviously, as I said, it is key not to damage the esophagus, so work with your doctor on that. Check your nutrient status regularly and use digestive enzymes and bowel support to enhance absorption if you need to. If SIBO is present, then you need to address it thoroughly, but always keep the goal of diet diversity as much as you can in the long term, and stay on top of constipation. It really does make a huge difference. And remember, supporting your nervous system through that vagal tone work can make such a big difference in this too. And if you'd like to get a proper insight into what is happening in your gut, then as I said, you can consider doing my gut health testing package. You will see the link to that in the show notes. And don't forget, we've got a brilliant live Q&A on foods to eat for autoimmune disease coming up inside the Autoimmune Forum on the 18th of June. So if you'd like to join us for that, just check the show notes and you'll find the link, and I'd love to see you there. So thanks so much for listening today. I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your weekend and take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.